Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the command center of Luna Base 7, watching the holographic display show red dots moving across the star map. Each red dot was a coalition warship, and there were hundreds of them heading toward human space. The base was hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon, built deep into the rock where no alien sensors could find it. "How many ships are we looking at?" Jake asked his communications officer Amy Foster. She was young but smart, and she had been tracking coalition movements for months. "At least 400 ships, sir," Amy said, her fingers dancing over the control panel. "They're coming from 6 different directions, all heading for our outer colonies." Jake rubbed his tired eyes. For 30 years, the Galactic Coalition had been slowly choking humanity. First they'd banned human ships from the major trade routes, then they stopped sharing technology. Now they were moving to cut off human colonies completely. The Coalition claimed humans were too aggressive, too unpredictable to be trusted with galactic civilization. Dr. Lisa Shung walked into the command center carrying a data pad. She was the smartest person Jake had ever met, and if anyone could save humanity, it was her. "Jake, we need to talk," she said quietly. They moved to a private room where Lisa spread out her research files. "The quantum fusion hybrid is ready," she said. "We can power ships 10 times faster than anything the Coalition has. We can also power weapons that make their plasma cannons look like toys." Jake looked at the technical drawings. He was a soldier, not a scientist, but even he could see that this technology was revolutionary. "How long have you been working on this?" Ever since they banned us from the science exchanges," Lisa said. "Turns out being isolated was the best thing that ever happened to human research. We had to figure everything out ourselves, so we did it better." Captain Ben Rodriguez burst into the room, still wearing his flight suit. He had just returned from testing humanity's first faster-than-light ship. "Admiral, you need to see this," he said, pulling up a video on his tablet. The video showed Ben's ship jumping to the edge of the solar system in seconds. Coalition ships took hours to make the same journey. "The drive works perfectly," Ben said excitedly. "We can outrun anything they have, and we can hit them before they know we're coming." Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, Earth hung in space like a blue marble. Somewhere down there, 3 billion humans were going about their daily lives, not knowing that alien fleets were moving to destroy everything they had built among the stars. "Sir," Amy called from the main command center, "we're getting reports from all our colonies. Coalition ships are taking positions around every human settlement." Jake returned to the command center and looked at the tactical display. The Coalition had been smart about this. They were positioning their fleets to look like protective escorts, not invasion forces. To the rest of the galaxy, it would look like the Coalition was generously helping humanity through a difficult time. "They think we're going to surrender," Jake said. "They think we'll roll over and accept whatever scraps they want to give us." Lisa joined them at the display. "We've been preparing for this day for 5 years," she said. "Project Revelation is ready. We have the technology, we have the ships, and we have the element of surprise." Jake had been planning Project Revelation since the Coalition first started excluding humans from galactic affairs. It was humanity's answer to alien arrogance. Hidden shipyards had been building advanced human vessels for years. Secret research facilities had developed weapons and defenses beyond anything the galaxy had seen. Most importantly, human colonies had been quietly becoming self-sufficient, no longer dependent on Coalition trade. "Amy, send the activation code to all our hidden bases," Jake ordered. "It's time to wake up our sleeping fleet." Amy's fingers flew over her controls. Across human space, automated systems began coming online. Hidden weapon platforms emerged from asteroids. Cloaked ships powered up their engines. Secret bases opened their doors to reveal fleets of advanced human vessels. Ben was already suiting up for another mission. "Where do you want me to go, Admiral?" "Take the prototype to our colony at New Dallas," Jake said. "Make sure our people there are ready for what's coming. The Coalition ships will probably try to land peacekeepers within the next few hours." As Ben left for his ship, Jake turned to Lisa. "Are you sure about this technology edge we have?" Lisa smiled for the first time in weeks. Jake, remember when the Coalition said humans were too primitive to join their science programs? She asked. Well, it turns out that when you force a species to solve problems on their own, they get very creative very quickly. She brought up another display showing human colonies across 30 star systems. Every one of our settlements now has fusion, reactors that put Coalition power systems to shame. We've got manufacturing capabilities they didn't think were possible. And we've been sharing everything through quantum communication networks they don't even know exist. Jake nodded slowly. The Coalition had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that isolating humanity would weaken them. Instead, it had forced humans to innovate at an incredible pace. Without access to alien technology, human scientists had been forced to develop their own solutions. Those solutions had turned out to be far superior to anything the galaxy was using. Sir, Amy called. Out. Coalition Command is requesting communication with Earth. They want to discuss the transition of human territories to Coalition protection. Jake almost laughed. The aliens were so confident that they were already talking about taking over human space. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Tell them we'll respond in 6 hours, Jake said. By then, every human in the galaxy will know what we're really capable of. He walked back to the window and looked out at Earth again. Tomorrow, everything would change. The galaxy had tried to exclude humanity, treating them like children who couldn't be trusted with grown-up responsibilities. Soon, every alien species would learn that humans had grown up just fine on their own. The Coalition was about to discover that humanity had not been quietly accepting their fate. Humans had been preparing for this moment, building weapons and ships and defenses that would shock the galaxy. Most importantly, they had been preparing to prove that human civilization was not something that could be pushed around or ignored. Jake activated the base-wide communication system. All personnel, this is Admiral Morrison, he announced. Operation Revelation begins in 6 hours. Today, we show the galaxy who humanity really is. General Kate Walsh stood on the observation deck of Mars Station Alpha, watching the last transport ship disappear into the black of space. The ship carried 3,000 civilians from the Outer Rim colonies, families who had been quietly evacuated over the past month. To the Coalition observers, it looked like humans were simply consolidating their population in preparation for surrender. "Ma'am, that's the last group from the Titan mining outpost," reported Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks over the quantum communication link. Ryan was deep in Coalition space, pretending to be a traitor while actually gathering intelligence. "Coalition forces think we're abandoning the outer settlements," Kate smiled grimly. The Coalition was seeing exactly what humanity wanted them to see. While civilian families were being moved to safety, human military forces were taking their places in hidden bases throughout the colonies. The aliens expected to find defenseless settlements when they arrived. Instead, they would find some very unpleasant surprises. Dr. Sam Parker was working frantically in his laboratory 3 levels below the observation deck. His quantum communication array was the key to everything that was about to happen. Unlike the Coalition's slow message drones that took weeks to cross the galaxy, Sam's network could send information instantly across any distance. "Kate, we're ready down here," Sam called through the intercom. "Every human settlement in the galaxy is now connected to our network. When Admiral Morrison gives the signal, everyone will know about it at the same time." Kate made her way down to Sam's lab, where dozens of technicians were monitoring glowing screens. The quantum entanglement communication system had taken years to develop, and the Coalition had no idea it existed. While alien species were still using radio waves and message rockets, humans had figured out how to make particles talk to each other instantly across the entire galaxy. "How secure is this network?" Kate asked, watching the data streams flowing across the monitors. "Completely," Sam replied. "The Coalition doesn't even know quantum entanglement can be used for communication. The Science Council declared it impossible." 3 years ago, meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Maria Santos was addressing the Mars Colonial Assembly. Maria had been elected leader of the colony 5 years ago, and she had spent that time preparing her people for this moment. The assembly hall was packed with colonists who had volunteered to stay behind when the evacuation orders came. Friends, tomorrow the coalition will arrive expecting to find us helpless and defeated, Maria said to the crowd. They think we've been sitting here for 30 years, slowly falling behind the rest of the galaxy. They have no idea what we've actually been building. The colonists cheered as Maria activated a wall display. It showed the hidden defensive platforms that had been secretly constructed around Mars, powerful weapons disguised as communications satellites, shield generators built into the planet's existing infrastructure, manufacturing centers that could produce advanced ships faster than anything the Coalition possessed. We didn't just survive their embargo, Maria continued. We thrived because of it. Every challenge they threw at us made us stronger and more creative back on Earth. The Coalition delegation had arrived expecting to oversee humanity's formal surrender. Ambassador Tony Mitchell was escorting the alien diplomats through the United Nations building, pretending to be nervous and defeated. Tony was actually one of Earth's best actors, and his performance was convincing the Coalition representatives that humans were ready to give up. Ambassador Mitchell, we hope humanity understands that this transition is for the best, said the lead Coalition delegate, a tall insect-like creature called Advisor Zek. Your species simply isn't ready for the responsibilities of galactic civilization, of course, Advisor Zek, Tony replied, keeping his voice appropriately humble. We know the Coalition has our best interests at heart. What Advisor Zek didn't know was that Dr. Karen Wells was listening to every word from a hidden room nearby. Karen ran Earth's Xenobiology Research Division, and she had been studying Coalition species for decades. She knew their weaknesses, their fears, and most importantly, their massive overconfidence. Tony's doing great, Karen whispered to Commander Alex Turner, who was coordinating with military units around the world. They completely believe we're beaten. Alex was watching his own displays, which showed Coalition ships taking positions around Earth. The alien vessels were moving slowly and carelessly, obviously not expecting any resistance. Our hidden satellites are tracking every ship, Alex reported. When the time comes, we'll know exactly where each one is. Meanwhile, in the deepest parts of Earth's oceans, massive shipyards were completing their final preparations. These underwater facilities had been building humanity's secret fleet for 5 years. Advanced vessels that used the new fusion quantum hybrid technology were rising from their construction bays, ready to emerge when Admiral Morrison gave the signal. The ships were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. They could move faster than Coalition vessels, hit harder than Coalition weapons, and defend themselves better than Coalition shields. Most importantly, they had been designed by humans who had learned to think differently than the rest of the galaxy. Lieutenant Commander Ryan Brooks was still deep in Coalition space, sending regular updates through the quantum network. The Coalition fleet commanders are celebrating already, he reported. They're talking about dividing up human territories between their member species. Admiral Vortex of the Centauri fleet says he wants Earth as his personal trophy. This information was being shared instantly with every human commander in the galaxy. Unlike the Coalition, which relied on slow hierarchical communication, human forces could coordinate their actions in real time. When the moment came, 30 star systems would act as one. Dr. Sam Parker was making final adjustments to his communication array when an alert appeared on his screen. Kate, we're getting some interesting readings from Coalition ships, he called. Out? It looks like they're powering down their defensive systems. Kate looked at the data and shook her head in amazement. They're so confident that they're not even staying at battle readiness, she said. They really think we're just going to hand over our colonies. Without a fight, the Coalition's arrogance was about to become their biggest weakness. For 30 years, they had looked down on humanity as a primitive species that needed to be managed and controlled. They had convinced themselves that humans were too simple to pose any real threat to galactic order. Tomorrow, every species in the galaxy would learn just how wrong the Coalition had been. Humanity had not been quietly accepting their place as second-class citizens. Instead, they had been working, building, and preparing for the day when they could show the galaxy their true capabilities. The last civilian transports had reached safety. The quantum communication network was online and ready. Hidden fleets were powered up and waiting for orders. Defense platforms were armed and targeting coalition vessels. Most importantly, billions of humans across the galaxy were ready to prove that their species deserved respect, not pity. The coalition expected tomorrow to be the day humanity finally gave up. Instead, it would be the day the galaxy discovered that humans had never been planning to give up at all. President Helen Davis walked slowly to the podium in the United Nations Assembly Hall, her steps echoing in the massive chamber. Thousands of humans filled the seats, while holographic displays showed coalition delegates watching from their ships. In orbit, every alien species in the galaxy was tuned in to witness what they believed would be humanity's formal surrender. Advisor Zek sat in the front row of the alien observation section, his insect-like features showing satisfaction. Behind him, representatives from dozens of coalition species waited to see Earth officially accept its place as a protected territory. They had already begun discussing which species would oversee which human colonies. Distinguished delegates of the Galactic Coalition, President Davis began, her voice carrying across the hall and through space to billions of listeners. For 30 years you have told us that humanity is not ready to participate fully in galactic civilization. Ambassador Tony Mitchell sat nearby, pretending to look defeated while secretly coordinating with Commander Alex Turner through his hidden earpiece. Alex was monitoring coalition ship positions from a bunker beneath the building, watching as alien vessels maintained their relaxed formations around Earth. You have excluded us from trade routes, denied us access to scientific exchanges, and now you come here expecting us to gratefully accept your protection, President Davis continued. Today, I stand before you to respond to your generous offer. Dr. Karen Wells was in the control room, watching biological scans of the coalition delegates. Their stress levels were low, their body language confident. They truly believed this speech would end with humanity begging for mercy. Karen almost felt sorry for them. However, before I give you our answer, I believe it is important that you understand what humanity has accomplished during our period of isolation, President Davis said. Posing dramatically, Advisor Zek shifted slightly in his seat. This wasn't the script he had expected. The speech was supposed to be a simple acceptance of coalition terms, not a history lesson. When you banned our ships from the major trade routes, we built our own, the president continued. When you stopped sharing technology, we developed our own. When you excluded us from your science programs, we created discoveries that surpass anything your scientists have achieved. The coalition delegates began looking at each other with mild concern. This was not the defeated tone they had been expecting to hear. Allow me to demonstrate, President Davis said, raising her hand. That was the signal Admiral Morrison had been waiting for in his command center on Luna Base 7. All units, this is Admiral Morrison, he broadcast through the quantum network. Execute Operation Revelation. Across the galaxy, hidden human bases received the message simultaneously. In 50 star systems, cloaked ships suddenly appeared as their stealth systems deactivated. The coalition had been expecting to find a few outdated human vessels scattered throughout their territories. Instead, they found themselves facing fleets of advanced ships that their sensors couldn't even properly identify around Earth. The coalition escort fleet suddenly found themselves surrounded by vessels that had materialized out of nowhere. Captain Steve Collins commanded the flagship of Earth's home defense fleet, a massive ship that dwarfed anything the aliens had brought. Coalition vessels, this is Captain Collins of the Earth Defense Force, he announced. You are in human space without permission. Please stand down immediately. Advisor Zek jumped to his feet in the assembly hall, his compound eyes wide with shock. What is the meaning of this? He demanded. Where did these ships come from? President Davis smiled calmly. These ships represent humanity's response to 30 years of exclusion, she said, while you were congratulating yourselves on keeping U.S. primitive. We were actually advancing far beyond anything your coalition has achieved. The holographic displays around the hall lit up with images from across the galaxy. Human colonies that the coalition thought were defenseless were revealing massive defensive platforms. Mining outposts were launching fleets of advanced fighters. Research stations were powering up weapons that made coalition technology look ancient. Dar Karen. Wells activated another display showing technical specifications of human fusion quantum hybrid technology. Our power systems are 10 times more efficient than yours, she announced. Our faster-than-light drives are 50 times faster. Our weapons can penetrate any defense you possess. The coalition delegates were no longer looking confident. Reports were flooding in from their ships throughout the galaxy. Every coalition fleet was discovering that they were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely outclassed by human forces they hadn't even known existed. This is impossible, Advisor Zek protested. Our intelligence reports showed that humanity was struggling with basic manufacturing. Ambassador Tony Mitchell stood up, dropping his act of nervous submission. Your intelligence was seeing exactly what we wanted you to see, he said with a grin. While you were patting yourselves on the back for keeping us isolated, we were using that isolation to develop technologies you couldn't imagine, Captain Ben. Rodriguez was broadcasting live from his prototype ship as it jumped instantly between star systems. Coalition vessels that tried to follow him were left behind, their drives too slow to keep up. This is human faster-than-light technology, Ben announced to the galaxy. We can travel anywhere in human space in minutes, not hours. The demonstration was having exactly the effect humanity had planned. Minor species throughout the galaxy were watching human technology with amazement. Many of these species had been oppressed by the coalition for centuries, told that they weren't advanced enough to govern themselves. President Davis returned to the podium as reports continued flooding in from human forces across the galaxy. Now, to answer your original question about whether humanity will accept coalition protection, she said, her voice carrying new authority. The answer is no, she declared. Not only do we reject your protection, we are formally withdrawing from all coalition agreements and treaties. Humanity will govern its own territories, make its own trade deals, and pursue its own scientific research. The coalition delegates were frantically trying to contact their home governments, but human jammers were blocking their communications. They were trapped on Earth, watching their entire understanding of galactic power structures collapse in real time. Furthermore, President Davis continued, humanity extends an offer of friendship and cooperation to any species that wishes to join us in building a better galactic community. One based on mutual respect rather than hierarchical control. Dr. Karen Wells brought up a final display showing the locations of human aid ships that were already departing for oppressed worlds throughout coalition space. These vessels carry medical supplies, food, and defensive technology for any species that wants to break free from coalition control. She announced the galaxy would never be the same. In one coordinated moment, humanity had revealed that they were not the primitive species the coalition thought they were. Instead, they were the most advanced civilization the galaxy had ever seen, and they were offering to share their achievements with anyone who wanted freedom from alien oppression. Advisor Zek slumped back into his seat, finally understanding that the coalition had made a terrible mistake. They had tried to exclude humanity from galactic civilization, never realizing that humanity was already building a better civilization of their own. The emergency session on Zentara Prime had been going for 6 hours, and the coalition leadership was still struggling to understand what had happened. Supreme Chancellor Vex paced back and forth in front of the massive holographic display that showed human forces across the galaxy. Every red dot represented a coalition fleet that was now surrounded and outgunned by ships that had appeared from nowhere. How is this possible? Demanded Admiral Korath of the Hegemony Fleet. Our intelligence said the humans had maybe 50 outdated vessels scattered across 30 systems. Now they're showing us thousands of advanced ships. Military Advisor Quinn was studying the tactical reports with growing alarm. It's worse than that, she said. These human ships are using technology we've never seen before. Their weapons are punching through our strongest shields like they're made of paper. The Coalition had built their power on the assumption that they were the most advanced civilization in the galaxy. For 1,000 years, they had controlled trade, technology, and territory by convincing everyone that resistance was hopeless. Now humanity was proving that assumption completely wrong. On the far edge of Coalition space, Admiral Chris Johnson was commanding Earth's newest fleet as it established protective positions around former human colonies. His flagship was the Earth vessel New Freedom, a ship so advanced that Coalition sensors couldn't even determine what it was made of. "Admiral, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 Coalition patrol groups," reported his communications. "Officer, they're asking permission to leave human space peacefully," Chris nodded approvingly. "Grant their requests, but escort them to the border," he ordered. "We're not here to start a war. We're here to protect our people and show the galaxy that there's an alternative to Coalition rule." The human strategy was working perfectly. Instead of conquering Coalition territory, they were simply demonstrating their superiority and offering protection to anyone who wanted it. This approach was causing panic in Coalition leadership while inspiring hope among oppressed species. Dr. Nina Lopez was aboard the terraforming vessel Earth Hope, heading toward the barren world of Kepler-7. The planet had been strip-mined by Coalition corporations for decades, leaving the native population struggling to survive on a poisoned world. Nina's ship carried technology that could restore the planet's atmosphere in months instead of centuries. "Dr. Lopez, we're receiving a message from the Kepler-7 government," called out her assistant. "They're asking if our offer of environmental restoration is real." Nina smiled as she looked at the devastated planet growing larger on their view screen. "Tell them it's very real," she said. "And tell them that, unlike the Coalition, we don't charge interest on our help." The Coalition had always used debt and dependency to control other species. They would offer aid with strings attached, creating obligations that lasted for generations. Humanity was offering genuine help with no strings attached, and the galaxy was taking notice. Captain Steve Collins was dealing with a different kind of problem aboard his flagship orbiting Earth. Coalition delegates were still trapped on the planet's surface, and their governments were demanding their immediate release. Steve was responsible for deciding how to handle the situation. "Captain, the Zentari Empire is threatening military action if we don't release their ambassador immediately," reported his tactical officer. Steve looked at the display showing Coalition fleets throughout the galaxy. Most of them were retreating from human space, but a few were still trying to maintain aggressive positions. "Tell the Zentari Empire that their ambassador is free to leave any time," he said. "But also tell them that any military action against Earth will result in the immediate liberation of every Zentari colony." The threat was not empty. Human fleets were positioned near dozens of Coalition worlds, ready to offer protection to any population that wanted to break free from alien control. The Coalition leadership was beginning to realize that they were facing a complete collapse of their authority. Ambassador Beth Harper was aboard a human diplomatic vessel heading toward the Rigel system, where 12 different species were demanding immediate meetings with Earth representatives. The Coalition had kept these species isolated from each other for centuries, but humanity's quantum communication network was allowing them to coordinate for the first time. "Ambassador, the Rigel Council is requesting full membership in whatever organization we're creating to replace the Coalition," reported her aide. "They're also asking for defensive technology to protect themselves from Coalition retaliation." Beth was reviewing files on each of the Rigel species. The Coalition had systematically suppressed their development for generations, telling them they weren't advanced enough for self-governance. Now they were eager to prove that they could manage their own affairs if given the chance. "Set up a meeting for tomorrow," Beth decided, "and let them know that Earth believes every species has the right to determine its own future back on Zentara Prime." The Coalition emergency session was becoming increasingly desperate. Reports were coming in from across the galaxy of species declaring independence from Coalition authority. The Andromedan Trade Union had voted to establish direct relations with humanity. The Vega Mining Collective had asked for Earth's protection against Coalition tax collectors. Even some of the Coalition's founding member species were questioning whether the organization had a future. "We have to consider military action," insisted Admiral Korath. "If we don't act decisively, the entire Coalition will collapse within months." Supreme Chancellor Vex studied the tactical displays with growing frustration. "What military action?" he asked. "Half our fleets are retreating from human space. The other half are dealing with rebellions on their own worlds. Even if we could organize a united response, these humans have already proven they can defeat our best ships." The truth was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. The Coalition had based its power on technological superiority and military intimidation. Humanity had just demonstrated that they possessed better technology and stronger military forces. More importantly, they were using that power to liberate other species instead of enslaving them. Military advisor Quinn brought up a new report that made the situation even worse. "The humans have just announced something called the Free Species Alliance," she said. "They're offering membership to any civilization that wants to govern itself independently. 23 species have already requested to join Supreme Chancellor." Vex sat heavily in his chair as he realized that 1,000 years of Coalition dominance was ending before his eyes. The humans had done more than reveal superior technology. They had offered the galaxy a vision of cooperation instead of control, freedom instead of subjugation. The Coalition had tried to exclude humanity from galactic civilization, convinced that they were too primitive and dangerous to be trusted with real power. Instead, they had given humanity the motivation and opportunity to build something better than the Coalition had ever imagined. Now every species in the galaxy was seeing that there was an alternative to living under alien domination. The old order was crumbling, and humanity was showing the galaxy what the new order could look like. 6 months had passed since humanity's announcement changed the galaxy forever, and Director Paul Evans stood in the newly constructed Free Species Alliance headquarters on Luna. Through the massive observation windows, he could see ships from 47 different civilizations docked at the orbital platforms. The sight still amazed him every day. "Director, the Andromedan delegation has arrived for the technology sharing conference," announced his assistant. "They're requesting immediate access to our atmospheric processors." Paul nodded as he reviewed the day's schedule. The Andromedans had been struggling with pollution on their homeworld for centuries. The Coalition had promised to help them for decades but never delivered. Humanity had solved their air quality problem in 3 weeks using advanced filtration technology. Dr. Carol Green was in the research complex below, working with scientists from 12 different species on a joint project to develop faster-than-light communication systems. The quantum entanglement network that had given humanity such an advantage was now being shared freely with anyone who wanted to learn. "Carol, the vegan researchers have made a breakthrough in quantum stability," called out her assistant Dr. Mark Wilson. "Their mathematical approach is completely different from ours, but it might allow us to extend communication range even further." Carol smiled as she watched alien and human scientists working side by side. The Coalition had always insisted that different species couldn't cooperate effectively because of biological and cultural differences. The Free Species Alliance was proving that diversity actually made scientific research stronger, not weaker. Fleet Admiral Dan Cooper was reviewing reports from human patrol fleets across the galaxy. His forces were now responsible for protecting 127 star systems, all of them former Coalition territories where local populations had voted for independence. The job was massive, but human technology made it manageable. "Admiral, the Rigel system is reporting complete success with their new planetary defense grid," his operations officer reported. "They've been able to reduce their dependence on our protection ships by 60%. Dan was proud of reports like this. The human strategy had always been to help other species become strong enough to protect themselves, not to create new dependencies. Unlike the Coalition, which had kept member species weak and reliant, humanity was actively working to make their allies independent. Secretary Julia Adams was aboard the humanitarian vessel Earth's Promise, delivering medical supplies to the Outer Rim territories. Her ship was one of hundreds that carried aid to worlds that had been neglected by coalition authorities for generations. The difference human technology was making was incredible. Secretary Adams, the medical team on Proxima 4, reports that childhood mortality has dropped by 80%. Since we introduced our medical scanners, her chief medical officer announced. The local doctors are calling it a miracle. Julia looked out at the stars and thought about how much the galaxy had changed. The Coalition had spent 1,000 years convincing species that they needed alien protection to survive. Humanity was proving that with the right technology and support, every civilization could thrive on its own terms. The transformation had not been without challenges. Several former Coalition species had initially been suspicious of human motives, wondering what price would eventually be demanded for all the help they were receiving. It had taken months of consistent generosity for them to understand that humanity genuinely wanted nothing in return except friendship and cooperation. The Coalition itself had fractured into smaller regional governments, some of which were now applying for membership in the Free Species Alliance. The Centauri Empire had formally apologized to humanity for decades of discrimination and requested permission to establish trade relations. The Vegan Republic had asked for help rebuilding their economy after years of coalition exploitation. Even more surprising were the individual coalition species that had broken away from their governments to join the alliance directly. The Andromedan Trade Union had voted to leave the coalition entirely. The Rigel Mining Collective had declared independence and requested human protection from coalition retaliation. Dozens of smaller species had simply announced that they no longer recognized coalition authority. Director Paul Evans was preparing for the most important meeting in galactic history. Representatives from every major civilization would be gathering to establish the permanent structure of the Free Species Alliance. Unlike the coalition, which had been dominated by a few powerful species, the alliance would give every member an equal voice in decisions. Director Supreme Chancellor Vexov, the coalition has requested a private meeting, his secretary announced. He says he wants to discuss terms for coalition membership in the alliance. Paul almost laughed at the irony. 6 months ago, the coalition had been trying to force humanity into accepting protected status. Now they were asking to join the organization that humanity had created to replace them. Dr. Carol Green was putting the finishing touches on the Alliance's new constitution, a document that had been written with input from every member species. The Constitution guaranteed that no single civilization could dominate the Alliance, that all technological discoveries would be shared freely, and that every species had the right to govern itself according to its own values. Carol, the final vote is tomorrow, Paul said as he joined her in the Constitutional Convention Hall. Are you ready to see democracy on a galactic scale? Carol looked around the hall at representatives from species that had never been allowed to participate in galactic government before. The coalition had been ruled by a council of powerful civilizations that made decisions for everyone else. The alliance would be governed by an assembly where every member had an equal vote. Fleet Admiral Dan Cooper was overseeing the final withdrawal of human military forces from alliance member worlds. The transition to local defense forces was almost complete, fulfilling humanity's promise that the alliance would not be another form of imperial control. Admiral, the last human garrison ship has departed from the Vega system, his communications officer reported. Local defense forces report full readiness to maintain security independently, then felt proud of what humanity had accomplished. They had used their superior technology not to conquer the galaxy, but to liberate it. They had shown that strength could be used to protect the weak instead of exploiting them. The galaxy that had tried to exclude humanity 6 months ago was now unrecognizable. Instead of a hierarchical empire controlled by a few powerful species, there was a cooperative alliance where every civilization had a voice. Instead of hoarding technology and maintaining artificial scarcity, there was free sharing of knowledge that was lifting every species to new levels of prosperity. Most importantly, the galaxy had learned that diversity was a source of strength, not weakness. Human innovation combined with alien perspectives was producing scientific breakthroughs that no single species could have achieved alone. The Free Species Alliance was not just politically different from the Coalition, it was actually more successful at solving the challenges facing galactic civilization. As director, Paul Evans prepared for the constitutional ratification ceremony. He reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The Coalition had tried to exclude humanity because they thought humans were too dangerous and unpredictable to be trusted with galactic responsibility. They had been right about humans being different, but wrong about what that difference would mean. Humanity had used their exclusion as an opportunity to develop better technology and better ideas about how civilizations should relate to each other. When they finally revealed themselves to the galaxy, they had offered not conquest, but liberation, not domination, but cooperation. The galaxy would never be the same, and that was exactly what humanity had intended.